Welcome to another video on GAA Lab with me, Dr. John Murphy. Today I'm going to talk about some mass-based training, give you a bit of guidance around what it is, but more importantly, how you can use it. 6 years ago, in around now, I put out an article on what mass is, how you can use it, and had a little guide there on how to plan out your teams. We'll go into more detail on that in the next video. Since then, I've used some variation of mass with 5 teams in person, had excellent results, and I've also consulted with another 6 in that period who all have said they've had great results. I actually found out afterwards, because I put that 10-week pre-season training block together, that 2 senior club teams came to me after and said, we use that, we just followed it as was, we ended up winning a senior county final. I'm not going to say where or anything like that, you can figure it out yourself, but they were senior hurling teams in Liam McCarthy competition, or from Liam McCarthy County, so narrows it down a bit, I suppose. We're going to go through here now, through a bit of a visual explanation, what it is, how you can use it, some sample sessions, and how you can progress them over time. Ideal for pre-season or that in-between block between league and championship with any hurling, football, camogie or LGFA team. So we're going to break this up into 4 steps. We're going to look at what it is, how to measure it, some sample sessions, I'll give you 2, and more importantly, how to progress this over the course of a training block. So we'll start off, it's Maximal Aerobic Speed, or known as MAS, that's what most people call it, mass. It's the speed at which you reach your VO2, or at least an estimate of, and its technical term is velocity at VO2 max, because velocity and speed are different terms for very similar things. To do it accurately, you really need to be in a lab to do it there with gas exchange, on a treadmill, graded test, but we can do a number of field tests to get an estimate. Some examples of this are our beep test, our yo-yo test, our bronco test. I'm always wary of any of those because they all have turns, and both beep test and yo-yo test are graded or incremental to get a little bit harder as you go along. What's more simple for what the majority of people have access to is a time trial, say for example 5 minutes, which can be somewhat difficult because if you're doing it on a track or whatever, you have to leave markings at every single distance. Or my own preference, and what the majority of people do is a time distance, but you need to find a distance that's in between 4 and 6 minutes for the players you're working with, so you need a rough idea of in around where they'll come so you can set that distance. We now look at an example test or how to measure it. So I'll usually set out, because the majority of people have access to this, 120 by 80 metres square. On a pitch, usually just so it can be repeatable over time. If there's something else you can use, like a walking track around your pitch or an access to an athletics track, by all means use it. Just make sure you're going back to the same one. It's generally even better to use that because the ground conditions won't change at various stages of the year. So that 120 by 80, that's going to give you a 400 metre loop. I'm going to multiply 400 by 3.5, so 3.5 laps, that gives me 1400 metres. For the players I'm working with currently, that'll fit in that 4 to 6 minute range. Some will be on the faster side of it, some will be on the slower side. Some might be slightly outside that 6 minutes, but so be it. It's the bulkier players that you still want to be getting that decent measure for. We're going to look at an example player here now. We're going to look at Brian. So Brian completed his in 5 minutes 13 seconds, 5:13. I need to convert that down to seconds. So 5 multiplied by 60 plus 13 is 300 plus 13, which is 313 seconds. Because it's Maximal Aerobic Speed or velocity, it's a measurement of speed. So we use units of measurement like miles per hour, kilometers per hour can be used. I have seen that sometimes, but most commonly it's meters per second. That's the one we're going to use, and it's also going to help us set up the various distances for our shuttle runs that we're doing afterwards. So our meters was 1400 meters, our seconds is 313, so you put 1400 over 313 meters per second and we divide them out, and that gives us 4.4 meters per second. That is Brian's mass, and we move down here now and use that as the governing principle. Brian's mass, 4.4 meters per second, and we're going to use that for 2 separate sessions. We look at our Eurofit and our grids method, or an adapted version of our grids method, and I'll tell you why I adapt it now in a second. The Eurofit is what's common, is what most people see as mass runs. Now, mass is any measurement, or is a measurement of intensity that we can use to guide anything realistically from about 70% to 120%, but these are ones commonly known. It's realistically the Eurofit method. That's our 15 on, 15 off at generally between 115 and 120%. So we work out here now just our 100% of 15 seconds. So 4.4 meters per second multiplied by 15. So if we're increasing the seconds by 15, we also don't need to increase the meters by 15, and that gives us 66 meters. That's our 100%. Realistically, he's not going to get a huge stimulus just running at 100% for 15 seconds, then resting. So we need to increase that a little bit to give him a greater stimulus. So 115% is going to be 66 multiplied by 1.15, which gives us 76 meters. And that's going to be his working block for these sets. So 15 seconds of work and 76 meters, 15 seconds recovery, 0 meters. He just stands there and waits. You repeat that. You do 3 sets of 8 reps or 3 by 4 minutes. In between those 3, you do 2 minutes recovery. And that's your, what most people know as mass runs, but that's your classic Eurofit method used by so many. Issue a lot of people fall into here is they do too short a test, so the reps are just too hard and it's really, really difficult to recover from, and they also jump straight to 120% instead of starting at 115 to build up at an appropriate intensity. Next one we look at then is our grids method, or an adapted version. So our grids method is generally where we have a square, we run at 100%, then 70%. We're going to alternate a little bit from that, because if you have a group of players, they can all become quite bunched up, especially on corners. So I work off a different version. I've adapted it to 105% and 52.5%, just because that's half of 105 and it's easier to use the same distances or repeat them a few times. So you multiply 66 by 1.05 to give us our 105%, and that's 69 meters. Then multiply 66 by 0.525, and that's 37 meters. So I draw this out here, and I will use like the same shuttles a few times for both work and for recovery. So they're 37 meters apart, or one longer rep is 69 meters. So we do one rep, which is 69 meters at 105%, 69 meters all the way across. We're then going to jog our recovery 52.5% or 37 meters across that midline. The next one is going to involve a turn. We go out, we come back to that line where we started, and we jog back across again. So we're alternating between covering 69 meters and 37 meters each rep. So it's work, incomplete recovery, work, incomplete or passive recovery. And that's how we use that one. And I will generally use in or around the same times, 3 by 8 reps or 3 by 4 minutes over the course of that. Last step then is how we look to progress that. I'm just going to look at Eurofit, but we can use the other one or use same principles for overload. When it comes to overload or progression, I'm going to use volume or intensity. I'm not going to use both at the same time in the same instance. It gives us more room to progress over time, but also helps stop overloading our players. So we're going to look at this across a 4-week block. We're going to start off in week 1, 3 by 8 reps at 115%. The following week, we're going to increase volume, 3 by 10 reps at the same intensity, 115%. Week 3, we're going to drop down the volume a little bit, and we're going to go 3 by 8 reps, but we're going to up the intensity 120%. We're going to maintain that same intensity, and we're going to do a week 4, 3 by 10 reps at 120%. After that, we'll do a bit of a deload, maybe not do any runs, say the Tuesday night, and retest on the Friday night. Now that I've explained all that, hopefully it makes sense and you can use it. If you don't, just check in the description box below. You'll find a link to both an individual one that gives you 8 sessions spread across 4 weeks, 2 per week sessions if you want to use them as an individual, or another Google Drive full of 10 sessions progressively laid out over time with a retest somewhere in the middle that you can use for your teams. Instead of doing all the calculations and working things out and laying stuff out, it's literally just a give and go approach to using it there. And if there's anything else you'd like me to take a deep dive into on a video or on the podcast, just let me know in the comments below, or feel free to send me a message across social media.